for us. It's like our neighboring country. It's our friend. We share a lot of like similar culture, values, and families with Yemen. Growing up in Oman, before we even learned about the crisis in schools, we saw it in real life. Like I would see children with no limbs, young people in wheelchairs, um, boys holding crutches that are bigger than their frames. Um, so, yeah. At Pearson, there's no Yemeni students to present their stories, so I hope today through this presentation I can give you more of a glimpse about the reality that a lot of Yemenis are facing today. So first, I'll talk about the location of Yemen. Yemen is located in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula. It is bordered by Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Oman. It sits next to the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea, and it used to be a very powerful country because of its regional geography. Before Yemen was known for war and the conflict, it was known for its greenery, culture, heritage, knowledge. This picture is of the Kingdom of Saba. Kingdom of Saba was one of the most powerful kingdoms in ancient Arabia. It was also known for its architecture. That picture over there shows the city of Sana'a, which is one of the oldest cities in the world. It has buildings that are like 2,000, 3,000 years old that are still standing today, even with all of the missiles and ongoing war happening. Yemen was also known as a hub for knowledge in the Islamic Golden Age, with its scientists and scholars contributing to areas like medicine, agriculture, astronomy. The Valley of Hadramaut, which is that picture over there, it's very known for its agricultural potential, and it has one of the oldest built-in terraces, like agricultural terraces that is like 3,000 years old. So I'll talk more about the history of Yemen. Before 1990, Yemen was not one country, it was two separate countries. It was North Yemen and South Yemen. The North Yemen was ruled by Muslim imamates until it became a republic in 1962. South Yemen was under British control until 1967, after which, when it gained independence, it became a socialist state. So as you can see, like they had very different ways of ruling, very different values, very different ideologies of what politics and democracy looked like. When the two nations came together, the president was chosen to be from northern Yemen. The vice president was chosen to be from southern Yemen. However, like the population of northern Yemen was greater, so northern Yemen got more seats in parliament, if that makes sense. So the key institutions like the government, the military, were all in northern Yemen. So southern Yemen felt like it wasn't represented in the government, that their voices were not heard. The vice president himself felt like that his role was more symbolic rather than actually influential. Northern Yemen got to fix their infrastructure, got more services, got better educational potential, got better job opportunities, while southern Yemen remained in its like undeveloped state. Not a lot of the government budget would go into southern Yemen. So people of southern Yemen felt like they weren't represented, like they were being shushed, like they weren't part of the country anymore, which created regional tensions. So like northern Yemen people would always fight with southern Yemen people. In 1994, the South attempted to separate from northern Yemen and return to like the two-country situation that was going on, and there was a war for 2 months. The war ended with the North winning. Technically, in the war truce, it was said that everything would go back to normal, but that wasn't what happened. Southern Yemen employees were fired from government positions. They were discriminated against. It wasn't rebuilt after all the damage that happened in the war. And coming into what is currently happening in Yemen. In the 2000s, there is this political party that emerged in northern Yemen called the Houthis. They first went against corruption and marginalization, Between 2004 and 2010, they fought 6 wars against the government. And like that also shows that the instability existed even before the actual official destructive war occurred. In 2011, during the Arab Spring, the protests made the president step down and flee to Saudi Arabia. The power was given to the deputy, but it was like he wasn't very strong in maintaining the power, so the Houthis took more control. They took the opportunity of the instability that was happening in the country to expand. And in 2014, they took control of the capital, Sana'a, and ever since then, they've been basically ruling Yemen. In 2015, the deputy president that was supposed to be, fled Yemen, and ever since then, there was no going back. The Houthis had full control, and no one until today is able to like gain control of it. As the Houthis gained more control, gained more influence, they came more closer to like the Saudi border. So Saudi fearing like their national security and their regional tension, they started a 5-nation-led coalition against Yemen that went from 2015 until 2022 when they signed the truce. It was a very bad period for Yemen because the coalition was led by Saudi, UAE, US, UK, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, France. Yemen was divided, and there was a lot of damage that was done. Like people died, missiles, a lot of damage that Yemen has not been able to recover from even after the truce. Even after the truce was Even after the truce was done in 2022, Yemen is still not really far from conflict because the Houthis still rule Yemen indirectly. And they've been getting Yemen into regional conflicts like the 2024 Israel-Gaza war, the recent war in Iran, them by launching attacks in the Red Sea and by occasionally sending missiles to lands they're not supposed to be involved in conflict with. Okay, even after talking about the history, it does not really communicate the scale of the damage that is done in Yemen. If we step away from government, borders, politics, what politicians say, and look at the situation through the eyes of the humanitarian organizations and journalists and the UN, the picture becomes very clear. The conflict could have started as a political struggle, but now it's formed into a full-scale humanitarian crisis. The headlines are not dramatic languages. It is a reality of what Yemenis face every single day. Okay, so this part, now I've talked about how Yemen got there, the history, but I want to show you what here actually looks like. I'm going to be reading a lot, so I'll just tell you the statistics. This is not dramatic language, this is actual confirmed data. An estimated 4.5 million people from Yemen continue to be internally displaced. Many of them have been displaced multiple times since 2015, placing Yemen in the top 6 internal displacement crises globally. Of the 4.5 million internally displaced people in Yemen, around 80% are women and children. At least 26% of displaced households are female-headed, 20% of whom are under the age of 18. Internally displaced children also face obstacles in accessing education. More than 2.5 million children are out of school, and 8.6 million school-age children need educational assistance. Many are forced to abandon their education to support their families or because there is a shortage of schools at displacement sites. Despite the conflict, Yemen hosts around 61,240 refugees and asylum seekers, primarily from Somalia and Ethiopia. Even after the military de-escalation in 2022, in 2023, Saudi border guards carried out mass killings of Ethiopian migrants at the Yemeni border, and they're currently being trialed for possible war crimes. 2024 data says that the Houthis' obstruction of humanitarian operations and blackouts of information within their territories have exacerbated the cholera outbreak that spread across the country and claimed 258 deaths among 95,000 suspected cholera cases. Between August 1, 2023 and July 31, 2024, 79 mine accidents killed 49 people and injured 66 others, including children. Houthis imposed new mahram restrictions, banning women from traveling without a male guardian or written permission, a rule that did not exist before. Over 80% of the population live below the poverty line. In May 2025, around 4.95 million people were facing crisis level food security or worse, phase 3, including 1.5 million children facing emergency level food insecurity. Malnutrition rates among women and children in Yemen remain among the highest in the world, with 1.4 million pregnant or breastfeeding women requiring treatment for acute malnutrition. 1 in 2 children under the age of 5 are malnutrition in Yemen. 85,000 children have died from malnutrition and countless more from preventable diseases, landmines, and crossfires in the last 10 years. I want to show you a video. Trigger warning, it shows acutely malnutrition children and reference to death and a dead body. It's 4 minutes.
العناية المركزة بالنسبة للأطفال تحتوي على 8 أسرة فقط، وكل الحالات وكل الأسرة مشغولة ولا يوجد أي سرير فارغ من الساعة 2 الظهر إلى الآن تقريبا الساعة 7 إلى الآن ونحن نبحث عن سرير دون جدوى ولا فائدة ولا يوجد أي سرير فارغ إلى الآن. جاهز؟
What price a childhood in Yemen? What price a child's life? I was born here. In March 2015, a 10-nation coalition led by Saudi Arabia and backed by the US and the UK started bombing Yemen. They came to reinstate the government that was pushed out by rebels called the Houthis, who received support from Iran. The suffering of ordinary people is a direct consequence of the way this war is being fought. Both sides are using control of food and fuel as a weapon. I'm suddenly called back to the central hospital by Ala's mother. She tells me I need to film the truth about what's happening to Yemen's children. When I arrive, it's a disaster. Ala spent the night in the intensive care unit, fighting for his life. Ala never raised a weapon in his life. He barely raised a murmur as he died. He had a family that loved him. He had friends he played with. 3 days ago, he had a future. And he lost it all.
Um, to comment, the reason I chose this video was because it encompassed all of the different aspects that showed the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. One, the casualty that are children. They never really raised any weapons, but they are the people that end up dying because of the war and after the war. The hospitals, they're understaffed, they're under-resourced, they're under-facilitated. After research, that hospital serves 120,000 people. It has 8 pediatric ICU beds. Um, it also, like, it's not that of an important, like, it's not the main aspect of this presentation, but it also comes to show, I don't know, it's a part of like the Western propaganda that is being spread about, oh, like people from the Middle East or from conflicted area in the Middle East are not educated, women are being oppressed, women are not given opportunities. As you can see, the doctors in the hospital were female. Like, it is just, it's just a point like to demyth Western propaganda going on. Yeah. And that is basically my presentation. I have prepared discussion questions, and I'm willing to take in questions if you guys have any. Does anyone have questions?
Sorry, can you read out the discussion point?
Hmm?
Can you read out the discussion point?
I've prepared 6 discussion points that we can have. Question 1 says, what does peace actually mean in a country like Yemen? Does peace equal ceasefire? I'm willing to hear thoughts about it. If you guys have any opinions, you guys want to share? Or does anyone have personal questions for me?
I just have a quick question. You mentioned the history of Yemen and that they formed a government between North and South Yemen, but I didn't quite catch. Did you mention why they chose to do this?
The British. Yeah. No, yeah, the British, they basically made a deal between themselves that they would reunite the 2 countries. And just like that, the people were forced to sign contracts and become one country. Talisa?
I'm sorry, I also didn't catch something you said in the history with the rise of like the Houthi government. Where were they originated from?
Basically, going back to this, this is an updated map of the Houthi influence. They did originate in the western part of the country. They originated from this area called Dahmar and like traveled and occupied their way to Sana'a, and then they've been occupying this area over here. Like, even if you check, like, for example, the current conflict, when Yemen does get like bombed, it mainly focuses on the eastern part of the country, with barely any effect going on the western.
A follow-up question: what's kind of the ideology of like the Houthis, and how did they gain support? Was it simply by force that they kind of took the government on, or did they have backing?
They are backed by Iran today, and they gained support taking on the, like, influencing people when there were tensions, political tensions. Like, so they first emerged asking for equality, asking for like no marginalization, and asking for societal development. So people gained, like, they gained support that way, because the situations people were living in after the Civil War were really bad, and like political tensions between northern people and southern people were very high. And then the instability that happened during the Arab Spring also like influenced it, where the government was very unstable and could not be trusted, and there were many militias going around killing people and like occupying spaces. So the Houthis came as a movement where people could actually kind of like, people trusted them, that they'd form a government and then that they'd bring like peace to Yemen and prosperity, and they'd rebuild, and they had all those promises made for people, and people believed them and they gained influence, and then yeah.
What percentage of like the population in Yemen supports them? Like, are people with them or are people against them?
personally, like today, I know for sure that there is a good population that does support Yemen, but they're also mainly in this area, which is like occupied by the Houthis, and also the Houthis have been occupying those certain areas for a very long time to the point where like people are brainwashed. So like in the beginning, they didn't really support them, but then like the brainwashing there's no other form of info or intel that gets to the people because it's like really blacked out and restricted. So the people don't know any better. Um, from the conversations I've had with the Yemeni refugees that come to Oman, because I did work on the border, like with humanitarian aid, not like a lot of people don't support them, but they don't support the government either. And like a lot of people who support the Houthis that I've met, they paint the Houthis as people who are like saving Yemen, who are protecting Yemen, and that if Yemen was not protected by the Houthis, that greater powers like Israel would come and occupy them. So, yeah.
What are some forms of like human rights abuses that are committed by the Houthis?
There are multiple human rights. The areas that are controlled by the Houthis, they get limited humanitarian aid coming in and out. There is like the Houthis also have committed a lot of like against human like a lot of insults in the Red Sea, especially during the current conflict, pirating ships. Um, they've also like the rules that they've implemented on people's like freedom, like women cannot leave the house without a guardian. um, Children after a certain age should stop going to school and be trained to become mujahideen, and all of those things are also done, like especially in those areas. Sitting.
Also, like, is there kind of like between Eastern Yemen and Western Yemen, is there like a richer side or a side that like lives better than the other?
Yeah, no, definitely. Eastern Yemen like is not very affected by the current war and like the war. So like a lot of people who can escape and go to the eastern part of Yemen. Eastern part of Yemen has also like recovered slightly from the war after the Saudi war. Like it was mainly a point of attack during the Saudi war, and then after the Saudi war, it wasn't really a point of attack. Like it isn't currently being attacked by any of the foreign powers that are attacking Yemen, because the foreign powers attacking Yemen currently are only like they're targeting the Houthis. They're not really targeting other places. So no, the eastern part of Yemen is like agriculture. There are people living. Like they even export things. Hadramaut Valley is like it has very good agriculture potential. They grow a lot of things over there. Like the country overall, the living conditions are very bad, and people are living below poverty line. But if you compare Eastern and Western, Eastern people are living better because like they don't have the constant worry of missiles and attacks and dying.
And then also like, because you said that you went with refugees, right?
Mhm.
Like, would you say they were from Western Yemen or like the people from like the East?
Uh,
Refugees in Oman, like Oman is
I worked on the border in 2022, and it was mostly people that were from Eastern Yemen, and then we had people come from Western Yemen, but they were like they went from Eastern Yemen, no East West. They went from Western Yemen to Eastern Yemen, and then after going to Eastern Yemen, they came to Oman. Like it takes time, and they would like I've heard people say that it's really hard to leave the Houthi controlled areas because they control who enters, who leaves, if you can escape. Like if you're in those areas, your life is very restricted on where you can go, what you can do. You're forced into the movement of the Houthis, so you become part of them and you cannot really leave. And I also worked in the hospital. Like I did an internship at our royal hospital, which is like the main hospital in Oman, and like they would treat the like refugees that just came, and like I would see a lot of people, like limbless, that had like diseases, cancer patients that would get evacuated from Yemen to get treatment in my country. More questions?
Yeah, I've read a bit about Yemen in like Western media, and they tend to skim over all this humanitarian crisis, and they focus on this big thing that Yemen is a proxy war. Do you agree with this kind of definition, and do you feel like it is a proxy war? I'm just
What does
curious.
proxy mean?
Any GoPro students? I'm not a GoPro student.
It's like
give a good definition.
like an actor who acts upon a foreign entity, like for Iran's proxy, for example.
And like a proxy war is usually when it's actually a war between two foreign powers that are just using the country to fight each other.
Well, it was between Iran supporting the Houthis and Saudi Arabia and the West, who wanted to stop Iran's influence.
I would partly agree, like that the conflict that happened in Yemen was because it was a proxy war, because the Houthis were supported by Yemen, and then the government was supported by Saudi Arabia, the US, the UAE, and they were using Yemen as their fighting ground, and then the Yemeni people were used as the pawns in the game. Even like, I think it was the beginning of Term 4, Saudi Arabia and UAE were fighting in Yemen. Like they were fighting their own conflicts and their own miscommunications in Yemen, and like we had like there were boats and missiles and like a lot of explosions for a couple of days. So yeah, I would agree that it is being used as a proxy war, as a war ground for foreign powers. Any more questions? Sure.
Why has humanitarian aid been not sufficient, right? Is it the Houthis that are blocking it, or is just the international community not stepping up enough?
When I was younger, like when the truce was signed in 2022, humanitarian aid started flooding all at once. And there's always been counts of the Houthis or other militias looting the humanitarian aid. So they would stop the trucks, stop the ships, take all of its content and go, and then you would find it being sold in the black market for higher prices. It would be exported out of the country, humanitarian aid. So I think that is one of the reasons. Another reason I think is with the other conflicts going around the world, the public eye has moved away from Yemen in recent years, and like different countries focus on different conflicts, kind of, and also a lot of countries have stopped sending aid to Yemen because of them saying that it goes to the Houthis anyways, so they're not going to be sending aid that would go to terrorist organizations.
Combination. There's
Yeah.
conflict fatigue and
Yeah. More questions? Ale. Okay. Tell us.
What's like, how does Oman deal with the conflict in Yemen? Like, you were saying that obviously there's refugees who move from Yemen to Oman, but like, how is the Omani like people? Like, how do they perceive that? How's the government maybe implementing support, or maybe they don't?
Like Oman is always known for being a country that does not involve itself in foreign conflict. We're always like the people who are neutral. We don't hold grudges against anyone. And then in the Yemen conflict, we've been supporters of the Yemeni people, not necessarily the government or the Houthis. We didn't really take sides as a government. But we have an open policy of like refugees are accepted. Like when I was working, like when I was at the border, there was no quota of how many people were allowed to enter or how many refugees we were allowed to receive as Oman, as a country. And so like there's a lot of refugees in Oman, like especially in the capital Muscat where I live, like you see them everywhere. And we've always been the diplomatic people. So I'm not sure what it's called in English, but when they have like talks between countries, we're always the moderators. Yeah, we're always the moderators between the Houthis and the US, or the Houthis and Saudi Arabia. We were one of the main like moderators when the truce was being signed in 2022. And like in the recent conflict, even with like the Israel-Gaza war and like how the Houthis were like capturing ships in the Red Sea, we were the people that were moderating the talks between foreign powers and the Houthis to like release the hostages and like return goods and services and everything. And Oman has always been sending humanitarian aid to Yemen, and like coordinating with the UN and all of that. Yeah.
Right. Do you think that the refugees that are coming to Oman are being absorbed into the society, or rather set up in camps and with the expectation that they go back to Yemen when the conflict is over?
we do not have refugee camps for Yemeni people. So they go into society. The government has a plan where they support them, like for the first couple of months, help them get jobs, help get them like medical attention free of charge and everything. They also get like what are alternative of food stamps and like government help. How the people of Oman perceive them, there's mixed signals between because like as it happens, like not all of the Yemeni refugees, and I'm not saying, but like ever since like a lot of Yemeni refugees started coming, we have had a higher crime rate or like a higher crime rate basically. So people are arguing like, is it better or worse for the economy and all of that? But that usually happens in any country that accepts refugees. So you would see both sides of like the point of views in the country between people. Any more questions? Ali?
Is there any like features that of Oman that allows it to become like an intermediate between countries in conflict? Like, I'm not sure if this is how it's phrased right, but what allows it to be able to like stand in the middle ground and not getting influenced by the different sides?
Oman has been an intermediate in foreign conflict. We are intermediates in the current like Iran-Israel war. We've been intermediates in the Saudi-Yemen war. We've been intermediates in the nuclear talks that happened a couple years ago between Iran and the USA. So we've been intermediates for a lot of the regional tensions that have been happening because Oman is known for its like neutral voice and diplomatic way of dealing with conflict.
One slight correction. When South Yemen was Marxist, Oman was the one. So it's not always been the case that Oman has been neutral. In recent times, it has been, but in the early wars between North and South, when South Yemen was a Marxist state, when Oman under Sultan Qaboos was definitely North Yemen.
I'm not aware of that, but yeah, maybe. Any more questions? Thank you. Thank you.